Okay, so I was sitting here doing some mixing and I realized that, this mix is just crazy busy. There is so much junk in the mix. And, it's kind of like this post-rock kind of sound, lots of ambient stuff. I started cutting the reverbs, but I just realized there's too much going on still. So today, I want to show you how to make certain elements more potent so that you can turn them down and make space when there's a ton going on. Let's check it out. Okay, so here's a little bit of the tune here. Yeah, I mean, there's just there's stuff everywhere, And the thing that kind of gives me a clue is, does it seem like the music's too soft? Like, why does it feel like the music's too soft? It's because the drums are soft. They're getting kind of dwarfed by everything else. And in a good mix, you could crank it up. You wouldn't hurt your ears on the vocal or guitars, but the drums would pump, right? And make your system kind of go, right? And move some air. So it's almost like the mix is getting dwarfed by everything else, and everything else is kind of fighting. So here's the concept for you. The louder something is, the more broad of frequencies that it'll have. So if it is a very loud vocal in a mix, you could think of like the big singers like I don't know, Celine Dion, or like the performing vocalist, right? Mariah Carey, right? I'm just kind of thinking back to the 90s, but those kind of situations where the vocal is really loud, right? You're going to have lots of lows, lots of highs. It's pretty much the priority, and everything else yields to that. Make room for that. Instead of EQing a bunch of junk out of the vocal, you EQ stuff out of everything else. You butcher everything else, make it smaller, keep the vocal big, because that is loud in the mix. And it also has to kind of stand and kind of hold the weight of all the frequencies that are kind of expected to come out of a modern mix. Now, the second you turn down that vocal and you want to bury that vocal and make kind of a rock tune and have guitars kind of surround the vocal, maybe it's a distorted vocal or something. Well, in that case, the smaller and you could say lower the volume, the more lower something is in volume, the more pointed it is. And so the more restrained it is, specifically at about 3K. And that's so that we can actually keep it at a low volume and we can have it actually poke through the mix. Otherwise, it doesn't stand a chance being kind of full spectrum. Lots of bass, lots of mids, lots of highs. Doesn't stand a chance if it gets buried. So, with this in mind, we have louder things in the mix being more full spectrum, full frequency, and the things that are lower in the mix, not frequency-wise, but volume, lower volume in the mix, are more pointed, specifically at 3K. We can attack this issue here of, man, there's so much going on. What can we possibly do to get this under control? We have synth, guitar, everything. So let's first let's deal with, you know what? Let's kind of build this from the ground up. Okay, let's just strip stuff away and get it sounding good with the melody, which for now is a synth. It's a placeholder. It might be vocal later, but for now it's just a synth. So let's build it with the drums and the vocal. Okay, so there's some lone guitar track somewhere in there. I'm not going to find it right this second, but you get the idea. There's way more space. All of a sudden, you can kind of get a sense for the song. Yeah, so there's room there. We just have to start kind of from the ground up. Keep our drums the same. You know, in live sound, I've been kind of building some kind of a team around me in live sound to do this church gig that I do. And the way that I've explained it to them is you have basically the drums and the bass, and those things pretty much stay constant, but then you have things that kind of swap out. And those are really things that kind of get in the way of the vocals. So the piano and guitars mainly. Anything else that kind of in the mids, you know, those are going to be interfering. And you kind of have to swap them out or be very careful how they interplay with one another. Now, in like a studio mix, it's less about just moving the faders for different parts of the song, and it's actually more about getting things to work, because we have the time to kind of finesse things with, you know, compression, EQ, and so forth. So, you know, what we have here is, yeah, we got the space, but we just got to make something more pointed so we can actually turn it down and keep that space. So let's check out this guitar. Okay, so I am using a very conscious choice here. I'm using a tube EQ, like a Pultec style boost EQ. This is very conscious. I don't want to just go for any EQ to do a boost like this. I want to make sure that it's something that handles flavor very well, and something that's kind of known to be, you know, okay to be used for that purpose. This is another example right here. So that's a pretty extreme boost here, you know? I mean, this is like really cranking it up. And but that's what it's taking here to get that pointiness back. So now watch what we can do. See how much lower that is? Now, if I were to take this EQ off, let's see how this sounds. Yeah, right away, it seems like a mistake. It's like, did they forget to turn up the guitar? What's the deal, right? But we add this back in. Well, let's go back with this Kirchhoff EQ. sudden we have the options as far as how loud we want it. And, you know, one of the ways that I judge a great vocal mic is that you can actually just kind of have a wide range of level in the mix. You can have the vocal real loud and it sounds really pleasant, or you can kind of bury it and it still doesn't get lost. And I think that's a great sign for, I think, great tone in general, as far as like the raw sound. Now, as soon as you start, especially with vocal mics, as soon as you start messing with it with EQ, all of a sudden it's like, I'm not sure if it's any better. It's different, but not better. So you have to be careful. And that's why it's so good to use mic selection on recording day to get your sounds for the absolutely critical things. So, you know, with this, we're able to really turn this down. And when we make this more potent, basically, we're making this more potent at the frequencies that really count for this instrument. And thus, we're turning down every other frequencies, who knows what, over here. So we're turning down the mud. We're turning down some of the extreme highs, for example. But we're keeping the stuff that we want, okay? Think of a potion, and we're making it more potent. Whatever, that's lame, but we're just making it more potent for the stuff that we want. It's like a guitar solo. We do a boosted 3K. Man, this would make the guitar solo cut like crazy, and that's a great use for this. Historic use for this EQ is guitar solo. And so we can make it more potent, we can use less of it, and then we have more room for everything else. So, let's get back on track here. Let's go to this synth and see if we can make it more potent, because it is pretty broad. I don't know that it needs to be quite that broad of a sound. It's taking up a lot of space, and, you know, I'm just not sure that it's quite working. So let's reestablish this guitar volume here, and we'll move to the synth. Okay, so yeah, the synth is just really big. Not sure. Okay, it looks like within this low latency mode, it's disabled the graph, which is fine. So what we're gonna do is just do it by ear, and this is what you do with any other EQ that has knobs on it, right? So what we want to do is find kind of where this instrument is really speaking. Okay, so right there, it starts to cut a little more. See, down here is a little muddy, a little weird sounding. It wasn't helpful. But right about in here, it starts to get a little more cutting. And right around in here is, I think, a sweet spot. I mean, we can try it, but that's my thoughts. Okay, so let's go back to the kind of the Pultec style high mid frequency. Let's go back to this Pultec style thing and dial it in from here. That's interesting. It's maxing out at what is it, 10 dB or so? So I guess that's how far the Pultec goes. Now in this Vintage 2 Boost, I don't know how this differs, but we have Q and we have a bit more range to this. So once again, I'm using an EQ known for its flavor, and usually when you boost, you're adding flavor. When you cut, you're looking to balance the sound. So we're boosting, we're adding flavor. We've gone to an emulation here, and you know, again, I wouldn't boost unless I was using like a minimum phase EQ, like linear phase EQ, or some sort of emulation known for its flavor, okay? And then now, with a more potent sound, we can duck it down a little bit, okay? Because it's still really loud and still not quite doing its job, you know? It just seems like it's weak for some reason. So what I'm doing there is when I disable the EQ, it gets lost, and I have to actually compensate with more volume. But with that volume, it's pulling up all the low frequencies, all the extra stuff. So when we boost, we're making it more potent, and with lower volume things in the mix, they are more pointy, more pokey, right at that, you know, right 3K, but really could go as low as probably, you know, 800-900 maybe, 1K. You know, somewhere in here. For this sound, it's right at like 1.5K. Just a quick comparison without this EQ. I'll try to match the mix here, okay? Which means I'm going to adjust the faders. Yeah, so I mean, right away we're back to this whole chasing our tail again. Turn one thing up to the next thing up to the next thing up. Okay, what if we can just use this concept of if something's meant to be loud, let it be full spectrum, full frequency range, good lows, good highs. But if we need to duck something down because there's just too many things competing, we make it more pokey, right? Right at that 3K. You could also say that we could do like high passing, low passing. Okay, that's another approach to this. But for this, I want to just stress this idea almost from a vocal mixing perspective, where you have certain vocalists that are really, you know, really piercing mids at like 3K, you know, really kind of honky vocals. And sometimes that can work really well. You know, like Phil Collins had a really piercing voice, but then he used a M88 to kind of counteract that a little bit. Hypercardioid, extra proximity effect, it's extra thick sound. But then he was also able to poke through these crazy mixes with these crazy drums in the air tonight. You know, there is a lot of bigness in some of his music, and I'm sure that that voice sound helped that out. So, yeah, it's this idea coming from the vocals that you could bury a vocal if it's more pokey in the mid-range, or you need to bring it up if it's more broad, okay? So with this, I'll give you one more kind of listen here. I'm going to play this mix, and then I'll add our adjustments from today. And I want you to just hear how it, I don't know, it just becomes less of a competition with the drums, and everything kind of has its place. Cool. So, one extra thing is the bass guitar, This is kind of getting into more of the cyclical nature of mixing where, okay, now that you've worked out these issues, which were just basically a death spiral of circling your tail, more of this now, okay, go over here and shrink this more, and then next thing you know, you're just maxed out. Now you've taken care of these issues, and now you can hear other things. So now I'm hearing this bass guitar. I could smooth that out. I could adjust a little bit. Bass guitar can actually be really tricky because it needs to be very slight adjustments and EQ, saturation, compression, just to make sure it sits just right. But that's the kind of thing that's best done in context over a period of time, over multiple mixing sessions as you come fresh with fresh ears. So yeah. Let me know if this helped you out today. Just this idea of the broadness being something that's loud in the mix and a more narrow approach for something that you can bury or that is buried in the mix. Talk to you soon.